What is the value of data? What is the return on investment of collecting data? As a data professional, I seek to solve business problems using information. And when that information is not available, that is when those questions arise from colleagues, managers, and leaders in business. And it's a tough question to answer. And the reason why it's a tough question to answer is if you want to show the value of information, you tend to need information to demonstrate that value. But that's the question we're trying to answer, right? Why to collect it at all in the first place? As I thought through this problem and tried to answer people, to say, look, let us solve some problems, collect the data. The response was, but that's going to cost money. How do I know that when I go through this process, that what I'm going to come out with is something that justifies the time and expense of going and collecting that information? For a long time, I did not have an adequate answer to this question. Oftentimes, I would say, there's a lot of companies out there that are collecting information. There's a lot of companies out there that are getting value from their information. And no matter how much you flower that language up, at its core, it's simply everybody else is doing it, so let's do it. And that is not an answer to the value of information. Thinking about this and trying to come up with a valid response, I started thinking about, should we be asking a different question? Maybe we shouldn't be asking about the return on investment. Maybe we shouldn't be asking, right, about what we're going to get out of the collection of data. Maybe we should be asking, what's the inherent value of data? So I thought this through, and in order to get to an answer to this question, what I did was I went and I looked at ancient Greek philosophy. And two topics in particular jumped out at me. The first is this notion of directedness. And the second is Aristotle's four causes. Let's start with directedness. And then let's tie that to information. And the best way to understand directedness is to use an example. And the example I'd like to use is that of an acorn. An acorn produces an oak tree. You could say that the acorn is directed towards an oak tree. That is what it does. And we can go one step further with that. We know that's the case, and we know that there's this directed nature towards becoming an oak tree because the acorn is not going to become a pair of sneakers. The acorn is not going to become a bowling ball. The acorn is not even going to become a different type of tree like a maple tree. The acorn is going to become an oak tree. And to take that one step further, an oak tree is not going to come from anything other than an acorn. And going even further, we could say that not every acorn becomes an oak tree. So while the acorn is directed at becoming the tree, it doesn't always. It needs the right environment in order to do that. These are non-controversial statements about an acorn, but how do they apply to data and information? And this is where things start to get interesting. If you think about data in the same vein as we just spoke about with the acorn and the tree, what you see is that data's directedness, its purpose, is to describe something. That is what it does. And like the acorn, that doesn't become a bowling ball, that doesn't become sneakers, that doesn't become a different type of tree, when you have data, it doesn't do something else. Right? That is what it does. That is why you do it. That is why you collect it in the first place. But very much like the acorn, that doesn't necessarily become a tree. Data does not necessarily describe. There are things that can inhibit data from fulfilling its directed purpose. And that is also something that you hear back from people in business. We have data, but it doesn't work. And we need to answer that question as well. What is it about information that stops it from fulfilling its directed purpose? And that's where Aristotle's 4 causes come in. When we think about Aristotle's 4 causes, which are the efficient cause, the material cause, the formal cause, and the final cause, right, we're going to take the same approach as we did with the acorn and think about an example. The best example would probably be a table. Well, let's go with an oak table to stick with the wood theme. And that would be the final cause. Right? The final cause is the why of everything. Right? Why build a table at all? Well, we want to sit down at the table. We want to enjoy food. We want to talk to our friends and our family. And that is the purpose. But having that desire and that goal is not enough to produce a table. Not nearly enough. To get to a table, one that we can sit at and one that we can use, we need to have craftsmanship, which is the actual ability to build the table, workmanship. That is the efficient cause, the action that is taken to build the table. But even if you have a purpose, a why, the desire to sit and enjoy friends and family and food, and you have workmanship, that is not enough to get you to the table. You need more. You need wood to get you there. And not only do you need wood, but you need wood suitable to the purpose. And I think oak, in our example, does that. But even with the purpose, even with the workmanship, even with the material, we're not there yet. We don't have a table. We still need a design. And that is the formal cause. When you have all 4 causes, it is then that you have something that is real and usable and fits the design and purpose for which it was made. Information can fit inside of this framework. And if we fit it inside of this framework, we understand something very important. We understand what needs to happen so that way information can fulfill its directed purpose of describing something. So when we look at it and we say, how does information fit in here? Well, if we collect information, we have the efficient cause. It's the act of collecting it. We have it in hand. But that's not enough because information can sit somewhere. It can sit in a variety of places. Or you can even collect it and it can disappear. We need more than that. We need to store that information. And that is the material cause. And there are many ways that you can store that information. You can put it on a Post-it note. You can put it inside of a spreadsheet. You can put it inside of a database. These are all opportunities for data storage. And like the wood, you need to have the right one for the purpose at hand. If we built our table, let's say, out of paper mache or paper or cotton or anything else, it would not work. If you're collecting data and you're storing it, you need the right storage mechanism or else you're not going to get out of it what you're looking for. But collecting it and having it, as we've discussed, is not enough. You still need to shape it. And the formal cause is the data design. It needs to address and shape what you're looking at. And this is very important as we go through and think about data and information and where the value comes from. Because data does something that nothing else can. Right? Data can make visible concepts and ideas that are not visible any other way. The example I use is that of a supply chain. And a supply chain is a concept. It's the interaction of manufacturing, transportation, and sales, but it's also the activity that goes along with it. And so if you collect data on your supply chain and you store data on your supply chain, if you don't make the data look like your supply chain, it's not going to be able to express that concept that you're trying to describe. And if it can't do those three things, then you don't have the final purpose. You don't have the final cause, which is the value of data. And that ultimately is what we're after when we think about this. And because data can do these things that cannot be done any other way, because it can make manifest concepts, you need to handle information within the confines of what it was meant to do, which is to describe. So bringing us back to the beginning, when I am asked, what is the value of collecting data? What is the return on investment? I would no longer try to answer that question. I would answer that question with a question. Because if what you are doing has value, if the process you're measuring has value, and you take the data through the steps, through the efficient cause, through the material cause, through the formal cause, then you have allowed information to achieve its directed purpose. And so if what you're measuring has value, then inherently your data has value. Thank you.